everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. We've been talking to Reverend Stephanie Red Feather about her book, The Evolutionary Empath, a practical guide for heart-centered consciousness. So welcome. This is part 5, I think, of our interviews. And I wanted to talk about embodiment. Specifically, what is it and why does it matter?
Yeah, okay. No pressure.
I know you've spent like 20 years thinking about this, but can you please summarize it in a sentence or
Right.
less?
So I want to frame this conversation in terms of how most spiritual and religious traditions put a focus on transcending the human experience. It's transcending the lower emotions. There's all different types of interpretations, to even being kind of hostile towards anger or more base emotions like no, to the, you must ascend, you must leave the body. Everything is about, we want to become one with God again. We want to become one with Creator. And to the exclusion in many traditions of the entirely other direction of energy. And so this is something Anna Dea Judith talks about. The liberating current is the energy moving upwards, and the manifesting current is the energy moving downwards. And everything is focused on the liberating, become one with spirit, expand, all of that, and you can see it reflected in messages. I grew up Christian, of sins of the flesh, and the body is evil and desires are wrong, and you have to you don't want to be tempted, and just all of these messages that plant these seeds that anything of the body is less than, that it's not desired, that it's not as important, that it's too primal, too base. I had an epiphany. Embodiment became a pillar of my work a number of years ago because I was at a spiritual gathering where we were going to get up the next morning and do ceremony, and I think it was an equinox. And the convener of the event got triggered the night before while we're all kind of gathering, and she kind of stomped off. And then we were all left looking at each other like,
Yeah.
And so the next thing, she didn't leave forever. We all were together the next morning doing ceremony, but it just hit me like a lightning bolt during that ceremony that what is the point of all of our spiritual practice if we can't communicate to the person sitting next to us, if we can't identify and speak our truth? If the whole point of being in form was to transcend the body and become one with Creator, we could have just stayed in spirit form. Why come into a body in the first place? So let me be clear in all of this that I'm not saying that transcendent spiritual practices are not important. I focus more on the body and embodiment to try to bring it into balance. I think both are important in a balanced practice, but we have so much information and so many millennia of momentum behind this upward direction that we need to counter it. Another association that I think is important to bring up is, in general, the body, embodiment, the earth are feminine energies, feminine principles. Whereas the upward, Father, God, always a masculine figure, trying to transcend the feminine to become one with the masculine in a way. These are all subtle, insidious messages of patriarchal, societies and religions. And, so it's very subtle how this stuff moves through our belief systems and informs our decisions and how we feel about things, and sets up this adversarial relationship with our own body that we may not even recognize. So I didn't know I was going to go into all of that, but apparently I needed to.
Well, the reason why this became so pressing for me was I my children were empty. I became an empty nester. They're all back now. However, I was an empty nester months before, and I walked the Camino, which is this 500-mile pilgrimage. And when I did that, I had so much. I was doing two things. First of all, it's a spiritual pilgrimage, so I would go into the Catholic churches, even though I'm not a Catholic, but I would sit and meditate, and there's just so much energy coming down into my head, like this blue lightning coming through my head. And then at the same time, I'm walking on earth every day in nature. So there's all this energy coming from the earth. And I felt disoriented. I felt unbalanced and disoriented. My body was having problems, like my ankles, like there was like energetic contractions in my body. And then I just felt so imbalanced. And I thought, something is wrong with my practice. It just doesn't feel right. Like I feel like a big balloon with a small string that's not even tethered onto earth, and it doesn't feel right. And I was, journaling, and what I heard was, you need to do something that is embodied without really even knowing what the word meant.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm kind of a walking example of, at least this is one person's experience of what happens when you're like this, and you don't have any connection to earth. But you were talking about bringing things into balance and how it's tapping into some of your feminine uh, aspects, like being in earth and not having adversarial. So what is the path towards
Yeah.
embodiment? How do we get there?
Mm-hmm. And I realize you asked several questions that I
Yes, I'm
probably didn't
sorry.
even get to before that, but the simplest way to think about what embodiment is presence.
Mm-hmm.
If you're present in this moment, then chances are you're present on all levels. So emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Embodiment can be thought of as stringing together moments of presence over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so to understand what embodiment is, we also need to understand how we got disembodied, because in our current experience of human development and how a child is raised and all of the modeling and mentoring that happens during our raising, we are internalizing messages. We have wounding events. We have traumatic experiences. And all of these things inform our energy field so that where we were once 100% connected to the earth, if you think of it in terms of the chakra body, we start pulling up our roots. When we feel unsafe in the world, we start to gather up our roots and we start to move the locus of our energy up our body. Now, leaving our body in moments of trauma is a naturally wired defense mechanism in our psyche. We hear people talk about it all the time. They're in a car accident, they see themselves floating over the site, or they're in the hospital floating over the operating table, or it's a way that we help handle a painful thing happening in the moment as we leave our body, so that we're not fully there to experience the pain and trauma of it. What happens is, instead of that becoming something we employ in the moment, it becomes something we employ over time, and it becomes a state of being that we don't even recognize, that we have retracted and we've moved up in our body, and we're not in the lower chakras. The lower chakras are more dense. So if you look at if you just even look at the colors associated with each chakra, the frequency of each color is lower. All different references and people that work in the esoteric realms will talk about higher vibrating beings, how much effort it is to lower in vibration to either communicate with us as humans or to make themselves visibly seen by us. So the more we move down, we get into the denser stuff. And this is where a lot of our pain, our trauma, our unresolved issues, our woundings reside. So a big part of the path back to embodiment is we got to get in our body and we got to deal with our stuff. And so that is a process. It's not a switch that you go flip, like bing, la la, it is work. It takes, well, it has to be meaningful. Nobody's going to pursue a thing if it's not valuable to them. So this is assuming that being embodied is valuable to you, the collective you, in the first place.
Right.
And so body practices, it could, I would have a more specific answer if there was an individual that I was coaching, to get a feel for, okay, do they need more movement practices? Do we want to do some shamanic breath work? Do we want to, okay, there's the specific trauma from childhood we're going to work with, so it's.
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about mine. I'll be the person that's a personal
Okay.
person. So I've done a ton of energy psychology. I've done shamanic healing. I've done a whole bunch of healing for stuff that I'm conscious is an issue. And then when I dive into them, I find a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't even realize was like residing below these issues, past life traumas, like just awful kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like in moving towards something that I wanted personally. I had a passion and desire to understand how to let go, how to embrace my femininity, like all those kinds of things, and how to uncover my authentic self, all those kinds of things, unveiled all this stuff that was in these lower chakras and potentially above. And what recently I've been focusing on is stuff that I don't even know, like stuff that's primordial, like that's wounding, that's just so deep I didn't even know that it existed. But yet, and how it manifested was I was not able to breathe. I'm like, why can't I breathe? Or feeling like constantly like I was choking,
Mm-hmm.
which then led me to, I haven't done shamanic breath work, but I've done connected breath work where you're breathing and you're kind of like trying to uncover stuff that's like deeply layered within that. And then recently just doing kinds of meditations where like I'm at peace with connecting, being attached to the earth, because it's something that I've been projecting my fears based on my traumas onto the earth and feeling unsafe to do that, right?
Yeah.
So instead, kind of like regaining my trust and faith in Mother Earth and kind of connecting down has been the recent path that I have. But it's taken a while, and and that's the stuff that I'm focusing on literally right now,
Mm-hmm.
as I've realized that you cannot, it's hard to be present, like you're saying, if you're kind of like floating up as like a balloon into the sky. But I'm kind of learning like, oh, this is why it may be hard to actually live a spiritual life if you're a balloon floating in the sky. But anyway, so does that give
Mm-hmm.
you any insight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like me to share what I'm sensing in you, like
Yeah,
to give
sure. Oh,
like
yeah, sure.
a suggestion?
Yeah.
Um, when we talked about the energy field, um, there's an advanced practice that I speak to in the book about building your energy container.
Hmm.
And so part of what I sense in your field is that it would be valuable for you to practice holding a bigger space for yourself, holding a bigger space for yourself, holding it longer. So it's kind of like weightlifting.
Mm,
Like if you went in and got on the bench press machine and there's 200 pounds, most women can't just go, with
right.
200 pounds, and so we might have to start with 40 pounds and work up to it. And so there's what this is related to that I sense is multiple past lives where you had to stay small to save your life,
Hmm.
to save your life, the life of your either a family
Family,
member.
yeah.
Yeah, part of it was what was culturally expected of women in that lifetime.
Hmm.
But there's a huge piece of that where, like when you do this show, you're practicing taking up space.
Hmm.
You're practicing. You are invoking, I have the right to exist.
Hmm.
I have the right to be here.
Hmm.
that can take energy, especially when the predominant message in your head is no, no, stay small. You don't want to be seen. Somebody, it's not safe. Ah, and so there's several things that seem to be all connected.
Mm.
So let me just stop there and see how that's landing
Yeah,
for you.
no, completely agree. I don't know how, when you're talking about bigger space, like one of the practices that I'm doing right now is like connecting to the earth, connecting above, and then just like literally expanding out to like a wide, instead of expanding, like I'm kind of a focus, kind of like focus on immediately what's in front of me, but literally expanding my view. So it's like kind of a 180 or as far as I can get to that, and like thinking that I actually have a back and
Mhm.
expanding out into maybe not a hamster wheel, but like one of those gigantic things that float on the ocean. Those big. I'm kind of making my circle bigger
Mhm.
and trying to like hold the space. And it's hard because I get distracted and I get,
Mhm.
that's what I'm taking away from what you're recommending. Is that correct?
Yes, and that, and you might get more specific, like if there's any of those phrases I said that resonate for you, or you might go into your own meditation or journaling and pull out a phrase or two, like, I have the right to exist. I have the right to take up space. Whichever one of those makes your stomach curdle the most
Mm-hmm.
is the one that I would work with to practice.
Yeah, when I'm doing that, it's like I have a right to exist. It's probably
Mm-hmm,
the one like I have a right to exist. And
mm-hmm,
then just kind of like holding that in the space. So like a mantra or affirmation that I would say in
mm-hmm.
addition to holding the space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like, an example that I use a lot is, a different example that might be relevant for another person is joy. Like that's been a difficult one for me. Is I tend to be more serious. So how strong is my joy container? How long can I hold joy? How long can I go before something busts the bubble? What does it take to bust the bubble? A little thing or a big thing? How long does it take me to recover and restore the joy container again? Or does it just stay deflated for a while? Because
Right.
you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, if I'm trying to strengthen this idea of holding the space for myself that I have the right to exist, how long can I hold it? How hard is it for me? What are the challenges? What deflates that bubble? How
Mm.
long does it take for me to reestablish it? Things like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Like so today in my meditation this morning, I was like, love. How can I, whether it's self love, love of the universe, love of like all the concentric circles that extend beyond, right? Because I woke up, as I said, at 4 in the morning, worried about my children and going to fear and doubt. I'm like, okay, love is the antidote now. So how can I go out and just like hold love? Like how can I, hold love in this space? And so it's the affirmation I exist, I have a right to exist, and I am loved, I'm sending love, I am loved, I'm sending love, something like that to kind of affirm and get into the right headspace. Is that?
Yeah, and whatever. I mean, there's obviously going to be practical things if you want to work with that, if you want to get into the past lives, if you want to get into the belief system that still exists in your field. The right to exist um, is a first chakra issue. So
Right.
there might be some first chakra work to do with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like embrace my sexuality, embrace my creativity, embrace my, you basically have in the book first, second, and third chakra issues and kind of looking and going, and I went through and going like, check, check. Well, not that one right now, but yes, check, check, like the other ones. So it's basically going into those and like building the container so that it's stronger in these first, second, and third chakras.
Yeah, and doing the work to figure out what the wounds are and to move through them, because you're not going to be able to inhabit that space fully if it's full of shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, like one of them I know is like a past life where I was buried alive. That's like the one that kind of like gets me each time. It's like it's hard to trust the earth when it choked me to death, in my traumatic
Right.
story associated with which is it's the people who buried me alive. not the earth. The earth was just doing what it needed to do, which is to rest in the earth. But in my mind, it's like, no, the earth is not safe. So go into that trauma and just like go through and be like, I have a right to exist. I'm safe, or whatever it is that I need to say, and be
Well,
in love. Or
I would say it sounds like as opposed to just what you're saying, that a process could be applied to that. So I don't know if you have a coach or somebody that you work with, but it might
yeah.
be helpful to get facilitated,
Okay.
because sometimes that, one of the things I've learned is it doesn't matter what kind of skill or knowledge I have. I need somebody else to hold space for me. Just
Okay.
because you know what I mean? Like I
Yes,
can't
absolutely.
facilitate myself through everything.
Okay. And so as we conclude, like, so it sounds like this is the work that you do individually, or do you do this work individually? I know you have a book that you wrote on embodiment that is on your website, but is this
Mhm.
work that you do as well individually?
I do. I work with a limited number of clients. I have it's been challenging because I really feel like in the last year to 2 years, my guidance has said my gifts to bring to the world right now are books, oracle cards, video home study courses, workbooks, programs. So that's what I'm really focusing on. But I do work with a few clients. I still love doing classes and initiatory processes, but a lot of those things have been canceled or put on hold due to the pandemic.
Yes.
Yes, I did create it's called the Embodiment How-To Manual and Workbook. It's on my website, available for download as a PDF. I've also got a video home study course called The Art and Practice of Energetic Clearing that teaches you tools and techniques for how to clear yourself, how to clear your home space, how to clear sacred objects. And I did want to mention in the book that there are 8 guided meditations that accompany the book.
Mm-hmm.
They are absolutely free. When you purchase the book, there's a website you go to that's hosted by the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And these are meaty, beefy meditations. They're not just let's float through the clouds kind of things.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's like connecting in with your body, like taking yourself into your emotional experience, connecting with the divine masculine, practices for working with the edges of your energy container, a lot of different things. So that's like a whole extra bonus.
Right. In addition to
On
the
top of,
book, you have a whole bunch of
right.
tools that you can use on your own, your do-it-yourself healing kit for empath.
Yes, yes.
I love it. So we've been talking to Reverend Stephanie Red Feather, and she is the founder and director of the Blue Star Temple and the author of this lovely book, The Evolutionary Empath. Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show, and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.